Today I want to share with you guys 10 of the best pieces of marriage advice I got before I got married to my husband, plus a bonus of one of the pieces of advice that we actually got a lot that turned out to be really bad. And I say that because we used it over and over again in our marriage early on, and it did not work for us. I'm Cameron. I'm a marriage therapist, so I'm looking back on all the advice I got before I got married about how to build a marriage that lasts and picking out all the best pieces for you guys, so hopefully you can avoid some of the mistakes I made and build a marriage with your future spouse that can last forever. So the 10 best pieces of advice I ever got were: number 1, expect hard. Number 2, choose your battles. Number 3, don't make any assumptions. Number 4, the marriage has to come first. Number 5, keep dating your spouse. Number 6, don't villainize each other. Number 7, hold hands while fighting. Number 8, go on walks together. Number 9, dream together. Number 10, be good to your in-laws. And then I'll save the bad piece of advice for the end as a surprise. Number 1, expect hard. I knew that when I got married, it was going to be difficult to stay married for life. That doesn't mean impossible. It just means that it is a challenge. And just like anything that's worth it, in my opinion, it's going to be difficult to attain that thing. Otherwise, everybody would have it. And when a lot of marriages end today, most people know that to stay married for life is a very difficult accomplishment. My husband and I knew that best case scenario, even if we weren't having difficulties between the two of us, even if our marriage was super solid, then we were going to struggle with things happening external to us. We were going to go through difficult life transitions. We were going to have family members that get sick. Our kids are going to misbehave. We're going to have issues at work or with people that we work with. We're going to have health issues ourselves. And we eventually realized that because we had embraced this idea that going through difficult things together is just part of the price you have to pay to be married, there's a lot less judgment coming from both of us when we did go through those difficult times. We were able to give ourselves grace and to be patient and just wait it out and work together to get through difficult moments, rather than freaking out and thinking because we are having this issue, that means there's something wrong with the marriage, or maybe we didn't pick the right person. No, we always have had confidence in our choice, even when the going gets tough, or even when we don't know how a certain situation is going to turn out. And that's because we knew going into the marriage, from all the advice we got, all of the messages that we got, even from people who we saw who had great marriages, and you would think they never fought, you would think their life was perfect, they said that it was going to be hard. And because we had that expectation going into it, it wasn't as big of a deal when it did get hard. Expecting hard also encouraged us to prepare for it ahead of time. So even before my husband and I got married, we talked about, any topic you could possibly think of when it comes to planning a life together. So we talked about when we would want to have kids and how many and how we'd want to raise them. We talked about our jobs and how important our careers are to us and what we would see as our lifestyle, down to, just the daily or weekly schedule of the life that we wanted to live. We talked about where we wanted to live and why, what relationships we wanted with our friends and our family, all of our values, all of our life goals. We put that all out on the table for both of us to know ahead of time what exactly we were looking for out of this life together. And then we decided on the areas where we weren't perfectly aligned, or areas where there might be potential conflict. We went about trying to prepare to deal with those issues so that in the future, we had already worked ahead of time to be ready for when conflicts would come up over slight differences. And it's really served us that doing that preparation ahead of time, even before the wedding, is really huge, even more than I ever thought it was going to be. Number 2, choose your battles. So there's this concept in relationship psychology called the magic ratio. And the way it works is it basically measures the number of positive interactions you have in your marriage compared to the number of negative interactions. So between you and your spouse or you and your fiance. And psychologists have found that when you have a relationship where the number of positive interactions is at least 5 for every 1 negative interaction, then the relationship is really likely to last. Which I found incredibly interesting when I found out about this, because it not only says that it's really important to have a lot of positive interactions in your relationship, it also says that every negative interaction is actually a huge deal. It's a bigger deal than we would ever think. So for example, if you and your spouse are getting into a disagreement about something and you roll your eyes, that counts as a negative interaction. Whereas if you compliment your spouse, or you guys go out on a date, or you do something for your spouse, some sort of, act of service, or you're doing something kind for them, those all count as positive interactions. But just that one eye roll, that cancels out 5 positive interactions that you may have had that day or that week. And so when I thought about this more, I realized the importance of choosing really wisely the negative interactions that we have in our relationship. So obviously, your spouse has a lot of say in the sorts of negative interactions you guys have too, but you can't change your spouse. I can't change my spouse. And so I decided that I was going to start really choosing when to bring up issues with my husband so that we could limit a lot of those negative interactions. That way I'm not constantly trying to make up on the back end with a bunch of positive things. It's great to compliment your spouse and serve your spouse and do kind things for each other, but you can only do so much to make up for a lot of negativity in the relationship. So if you can go about choosing your battles wisely and deciding what's really worth the fight and what maybe can wait, or what doesn't even need to be brought up at all. If your spouse makes a mistake or forgets something or says something and you're like, I don't know if you really meant that, but that wasn't the nicest thing, but I'm gonna let it go because it's only happened once. That's really served us a lot in our marriage, and it really works well for the clients that I've worked with as well. If you're choosing your battles, then you and your spouse are really likely to have that optimal magic ratio of 5-1 positive to negative in your relationship. Number 3, don't make any assumptions. So this is assumptions about each other, about your views on the world, about your plans for the future. I've found that the things that my clients assume about each other, the things that I've assumed about my husband or vice versa, those always feed into future conflict. They are the content that causes us to fight in the future. And the reason for that is if we don't have these direct conversations with our spouse about all the details of life, and I literally mean all the details. So for example, my husband has a particular way that he likes to load the dishwasher. And if I had just assumed that his way of loading the dishwasher was the same as mine, which is I kind of put things in there randomly, but he has a specific way that he likes, the plates and the silverware and all of the cups and everything. To be fair to him, our dishes get much cleaner now that we do it his way. But if I had just assumed that his way was the same as mine, even on this little thing, then that would have become an opportunity for us to argue every single time I load the dishwasher or he loads the dishwasher. We would have been able to argue about why he does it his way, why I do it my way, or why I'm not doing it the way that he thinks is right. And because he's the one that actually has a preference and his way is honestly better, I adopted his way. But that only happened early on to avoid conflict because we talked about it. We went through the different parts of our kitchen, literally the different parts of our kitchen, and decided where we're going to put things, how often we're going to clean the kitchen, how things are going to be arranged in drawers, and what we're going to do with things after we use them. And that has really helped us eliminate a lot of the conflict in our relationship surrounding cooking and surrounding, the food making space and cleaning up after ourselves, because we took the time to have the conversations and to not assume that we were always on the same page without actually talking about it. The areas that are most important to have these sort of direct conversations before you get married or right when you get married are about your values. So your religious views, your political views, your views on gender roles or division of labor in the home, all of these things that make up your worldview, in addition to what your view of a great marriage looks like, the marriage that you want, what your interactions are going to be like, how you'll resolve conflict, how you'll stay in touch with each other, how you'll continue to maintain and deepen your friendship, what your sex life is going to look like, and how you're going to parent, how many kids you want to have. All of these questions about the future and about the life that you want, these are so essential to talk about ahead of time so that you're not assuming you guys are on the same page and then you get to the moment when you want to have a kid but your spouse isn't ready. And you would have known that, you guys would have known that you had a difference in that value if you had talked about it ahead of time. And I use this example because this is so common in couples. I see this all the time, that couples will get to a point where the wife or the husband is ready to have a kid and the other one says, I'm not ready at all. I'm years away. And then it's really difficult to compromise when you're already in that emotional position and you're realizing that you didn't know you had this difference because you didn't talk about it. You just kind of assumed that, oh, I love this person, so we must be on the same page. I think my spouse is pretty similar to me. We must agree on this. Number 4, the marriage has to come first. So I like to say that what gets prioritized gets done. And that means that the things that you write out in your weekly schedule or your daily schedule, for example, the things that you write first, the things that you tackle first in your day or that you put into your schedule and say, these are the non-negotiables. These are the things that I have to do this week, and everything else comes around them. Those are going to be the things that you actually do. And hopefully you get to do everything else too, but the things that you rank at the top of your list, if you're going to do anything, it's going to be those top things. And those top things need to be whatever is required to maintain your relationship. I found this to be incredibly relevant, particularly as soon as my husband and I started having kids. So I spend a ton of time with our kids between, the pregnancies and the breastfeeding and really wanting to spend a lot of time with our young children. I am with them a lot more than my husband is, which is totally fine for us. It works for us. But as soon as our kids came into the picture, we had to start being very intentional about the time that we spend together because we both work and we have kids now. And so if we let our priorities in our marriage slip, it'd be very easy to just spend all of our time working or focusing on our kids and forgetting about the marriage. And to be honest, that is very common in a lot of marriages. And that's why you see a lot of people start to drift apart, particularly after they become parents, because they've forgotten to prioritize the marriage. And so in practical terms, prioritizing your marriage doesn't mean spending more time with your spouse than your kids. It doesn't mean spending more time with your spouse than you do at work. I don't know anybody who does that, honestly, especially when your kids are young, especially if you work full time. You're not going to be with your spouse as many hours of the day. Prioritization instead means that when you pull out your weekly schedule, which I recommend actually having a physical schedule, or like a Google Calendar or something you guys can share. When you pull that out and you're adding the things that you're going to do that week, the first things you put in are the time you're spending together. It's when you're going to spend time together, what you're going to do, and how you're going to make sure that that time is uninterrupted, it's focused, it's high quality, and it is everything that you guys need to keep your marriage solid. This is going to do so much good. This is probably one of the things that has done the most good for my husband and I, is this prioritization as prevention. You've probably heard the saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, which basically means that if you can preempt a bad scenario from happening, if you can prevent it from happening at all, then that's a lot better than trying to cure it or treat the bad situation after the fact. So this weekly prioritization of your time with your spouse, that is your prevention. That is how you maintain an awesome marriage so that you guys never get into a crisis where you realize that you've drifted so far apart that you're not sure how to come back together and you don't even know how to spend time with each other anymore. You don't even know how to prioritize your time together or how to work on the marriage because it's been so long and you haven't done that. And so starting off the marriage from the very beginning, putting your spouse above really most other things, like putting your spouse above your kids and above your work and above your other relationships. And maybe, if you're religious, the only exception would be your relationship with God. I know most religious people believe that your relationship with God should be first. But other than that, really putting the marriage way up there so that you do not compromise that time that you guys need to be together to keep the marriage solid and give you both a firm foundation to prevent any future huge falling out or issues down the line. And the best way, in my opinion, to practice in your daily life together this idea of prevention or putting the marriage first is the next piece of advice. Number 5, keep dating your spouse. I think a lot of people overthink this one. They think, what does it even mean to keep dating your spouse? Because once you're married, you're not technically dating anymore. It's a very different relationship, and it should be. It's a much more secure, much more holistic relationship that involves a total self-giving of both spouses. However, in order to make sure that you're both prioritizing each other, prioritizing the marriage, and doing all the things you need to do to keep your relationship strong, that is what continuing to date means. So if you think back to when you guys first started dating, what were all the things that you did for each other? Did you surprise each other occasionally with a little gift or a handwritten letter or a cute text or a voice memo or a call out of nowhere or just, an I love you when you weren't expecting it? Did you guys make big deals out of birthdays and holidays and anniversaries and all of the little days for your relationship, like when you guys first started dating or when you went on your first date or the time you first said I love you to each other? And these are all examples of things that I used to do and try to continue to do in my marriage, is celebrate all the little moments that marked important points in my relationship with my husband before we got married. Continuing to date your spouse is really just continuing to put in that effort that you put in when you first started dating that was so much higher than it tends to be after you get married for a lot of reasons. Number one is when you're first dating, you're trying to win someone over. You want to prove to this person who you're really interested in that you are worth going out with. And so you put in more effort to be on your best behavior or to show all of the best parts of you, which is awesome. And it works because you guys are either engaged or you just got married, and so you did win over that person. However, continuing to date means continuing to put in the effort to keep winning each other over, to keep showing how much you guys mean to each other. So now it's not about convincing someone to love you. Now it's about proving that you love the other person, continuing to show your love for the other person by continuing to put in that effort. So the effort's intention is different. You don't have to win your spouse's love anymore. You've already got it. That marriage is about freely giving love to each other. But now that you've got your spouse's love, continuing to show your own through that effort. At a minimum, that's going on 1 3-hour date every week together alone. So going out, doing something you both love, having a good time together, and really just catching up, trying to continue to deepen your bond, not talking about chores, not talking about all the problems that you're having in your relationship or issues with the kids or anything else that you wouldn't have talked about early on a date. So really treat this date like you're trying to continue to get to know this person that you decided to dedicate the rest of your life to. If you can, try to dress nice on some of these dates. So really act like this was one of your early dates and you want to impress each other and you want to come across as attractive to the person that you're going on the date with. That matters as much or more the further you get into marriage as it does early on in the relationship. All of those inputs early on are just as important later down the line to show that you guys are still making an effort for each other. Number 6, don't villainize each other. This has been so huge for my husband and I because I learned the hard way with relationships that I was in before I met my husband that if you tell anyone in your family, any of your friends, bad things about the person that you're dating or the person you're married to, they don't forget it. So when I started dating my husband, I committed to never saying something negative about him that I would not want the person I'm telling to bring up later. So if it's something little like, oh yeah, my husband got home late tonight, so I'm just hanging out with the baby for a little while. That's very different than complaining about something that he said to you or something he did or, the way he's been acting. That complaining to the people you love is just going to set you guys up for more difficult times down the line because the people in your corner, your family, your friends, they're on your side. And I didn't realize this really until right before I met my husband, that although my family and friends love my husband, they think that we're great together, they're very happy for us, if it ever came down to it, they were always going to choose me. They were always going to be on my side. So if I tell them things negative about my husband, they're going to believe me and they're going to side with me. And it's going to be hard for them to get over that, especially because unfortunately, as human beings, we tend to latch on to the negatives a lot more. This is really similar to the magic ratio that we were just talking about, where you need 5 positive interactions to make up for 1 negative one in your relationship. It's the same in all of your other relationships and your friends and family's relationship with your spouse. So every time you say something negative, it's going to take them seeing or hearing from you 5 positive things to make up for that, at least. But the problem is we very rarely share the positives with other people because we kind of think they're boring. It's like, okay, hey mom, it's as if I call my mom on the phone and say, hey, we had another great marriage day. My husband treated me well again today. All good here. It's not really something that I do personally, and I've never heard many people doing that because that's expected. That's the default. And so we share negative things because they help us bond with other people and they're out of the ordinary. But the problem is then the people that we love mostly hear negative things about our fiance or the person we're dating or our spouse. And it's really hard to overcome that and hard to help your loved ones reconcile with the person who you're spending the rest of your life with. And that's just going to cause issues later in the marriage. So if you can avoid sharing anything negative with your loved ones about your spouse, that's ideal. If you have to share something, try to keep it as small as possible, and seeking out support, whether that's in a therapist or in somebody at your church or your religious organization, or even somebody in your community who you know, but they're not super close to you. You can tell people like that things if you really need to get it off your chest. But the best scenario is actually just to talk to your spouse about it. So if you guys are having issues, figure out how to build the communication skills you need to have that conversation together rather than going to all your loved ones to complain. Number 7, hold hands while fighting. So I'm still working on this one because I tend to draw into myself when my husband and I fight. I tend to want to back away and just either be by myself or not make any physical contact. That's just how I react, defense mechanism, I don't know. But every time that I've been able to reach out instead and give him a hug or hold hands or any sort of loving physical contact, I realized that not only did it make him feel better, it also made me feel better. It also shortened the conflict and it made everything seem like way less big of a deal. And I realized that this happens, at least for us, because it reminds me that my husband's not my opponent. He's not my enemy. He's my teammate. And we are on the same team trying to solve this problem together. And also underlying that, holding hands or hugging releases oxytocin in both of your brains. So oxytocin is the feel-good hormone. It helps you calm down. It makes you feel loved and more happy. And all of those are good emotions to have when you're in a conflict because it's going to help counteract, it's going to balance out all the negative stuff that's coming out in the fight. Number 8, go on walks together. So this one's all about doing good things for yourself, but doing them together. So whether it's good for your mental or physical or spiritual health, doing things together that help you both become better people, better versions of yourselves. And my husband and I took this super literally. We go on walks together all the time. Basically every night that we can, unless it's super freezing or raining or, he gets home late or something. But you can translate this into going to the gym together or doing some sort of physical hobby or, sport together. Maybe you guys meditate together or do yoga or cook healthy food together or go to church together or pray together. Anything that you would have wanted to do on your own before you got married because you knew that it was good for you. Doing those things with your spouse is going to not only help you, obviously, because you're doing the same things that you know are good for you, but it's also really going to strengthen the relationship, and that is going to do even more good for you. So the reason that I love this one is that it's a double whammy. You're doing something that's inherently positive for both of your health, but it's also great for the health of the relationship. And so you just get more and more positive benefits from doing these good things together. Number 9, dream together. So this one overlaps with not making any assumptions, but it goes a step further in not only talking about what you want out of your marriage or when you want to have kids or all of your values, but it's actually setting goals together. So there is some really great research out there where psychologists have shown that couples who set goals together are much more likely to stay together, which I just think is really cool because if you think about it from an individual perspective, people who set goals are more likely to achieve them because they know the direction they want to go. But for some reason, we don't often think about this in our own relationships. But if a couple sets goals together and that makes them more likely to stay together, the reason for that is because setting goals together gives you guys both something to aim at. It gives you a direction that you're both pointed in, and that every day you are able to do things that you know are aligned with that shared goal. So every day you are walking together in the same direction rather than slowly over time drifting further and further apart because your goals are different. So the best way to go about this is to do it in all aspects of your life together. So setting goals for the sort of marriage that you want, how you want to communicate with each other, how much time you want to spend with each other, what you want your marriage to look like, what sort of family you want to build, what lifestyle you want to have, what your financial goals are together, just everything that you think is relevant for the future that you guys want together, including that in your goal setting. And you'll want to do this at least once a year. And that's because our goals change. I mean, even if you weren't married, even if you were just setting goals for yourself, your goals are still going to change. So if you bring together two people who are both changing all of the time, chances are the goals are going to change even more just because it's two instead of one. And so revisiting your goals every year for the rest of your marriage together is going to help you guys stay on the same page, stay headed in the same direction, and have something that is bonding you together for life. By the way, if you and your fiance or spouse are interested in a guided goal setting activity like this, I'm coming out with one in the next few weeks on our platform Hitched. Totally free of charge to the first 100 couples who want to try it out. If you're interested in that, go to lovebyhitch.com and you can join the waitlist, so you'll find out as soon as it gets released. And number 10, be good to your in-laws. So this is my favorite one because I have found in my relationship with my husband that the more I treat his family well, the more dividends it returns for our relationship. And obviously early on, when I was first getting to know them, when my husband and I first got engaged, I was not being kind to them because I thought they could do stuff for us later. That was not at all the plan. I mostly just wanted them to like me. I wanted the people who mattered to my husband, who created my husband, really. I wanted them to know that he was marrying someone good. And over time, especially once we started having kids, it has been such a huge blessing having them in our lives and having people who were on our side and there to support us. And I included this as the very last piece of great marriage advice that I've gotten, because not only has it been huge for my marriage, but I've also seen how hard it is for other married couples to get along with their in-laws on both sides for whatever reason. Even though your in-laws created the person you love more than anything in the world, for whatever reason, it's often really hard to get along with them. I don't know why. It's just nature, I guess. But the more you can treat them well, the more you can love them, the more you can pull them into your life together and make them a part of your relationship rituals and routines and just really treat them well, the more you're going to have the support that you need for the future of your marriage. The more you're going to be able to lean on them as an extra set of parents and grandparents to help you along every step of your journey. I honestly can't count the number of ways that my in-laws have really helped us in our marriage up to this point. And I know that that wouldn't be the case if we hadn't tried to love them as well as we could. And if they hadn't tried to love us back. And so if you're someone who your in-laws are really a pain in your butt, and maybe that's mostly on them, instead of focusing on what you can't control, which is how they treat you, and really even more how they treat your spouse, because that one is the one that's always the hardest to get over. Just focus on what you guys can do. And that is try to treat them well and try to protect yourselves with appropriate boundaries, but loving boundaries. And I promise that if you're able to do that, it is going to go so far for you guys in your marriage, especially the further into marriage you get. And as promised, the worst piece of marriage advice we ever got, I want to say half of the people or more at our wedding who gave us a piece of marriage advice, if they wrote it down on the little cards that we handed out for people to give us a note or give us a piece of advice, half of them said, never go to bed angry. I'm not kidding. And we really tried this. My husband and I tried this for probably the first 18 months of our marriage, and it did not go well. We eventually realized it's because we were tired, and when you're tired and stressed and you've had a long day and you just want to go to sleep, you say dumb stuff. And this is particularly true of me. I would wake up the next morning and realize that I had said stuff or blown the conflict out of proportion in a way that would not have happened if I had just let us go to bed and deal with the issue the next day. So we no longer take this advice. We have a cutoff of, what is bedtime every night, and we're not going to fight past then. And we're just going to deal with the fact that even if we're falling asleep angry, chances are we're going to wake up a lot happier, or at least a lot less angry, even though we didn't solve the conflict. And an even bigger chance that I found is that the next day when we do wake up and we are well rested and we just let it go for the night, it's usually not an issue the next day. And even if it is, it's a much smaller issue, and we have much more energy and focus that we can devote to solving that problem together. So if someone tells you never to go to bed angry, at least for us, it did not work. And if you are approaching marriage, or you guys just got married, chances are, if you are asking for marriage advice, or even if you're not, someone is going to tell you this. Feel free to try it out for yourselves, but I will say that we benefited a lot from just letting it go and trying to address things the next day. Okay, guys, I hope this advice was really helpful for you. Again, so you can avoid some of the mistakes that I made early on in my marriage, that you guys can just get off to a running start and have the best marriage ever for the rest of your lives together. As always, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment on this video if any of these pieces of advice resonated with you, if you like them, if you don't like them, what your thoughts are. And please do share this video with anyone who you think could get something from its message. It really helps the channel grow, and it lets me know what sort of content you guys are looking for. I'm Cameron, and this is Modern Marriage. See you guys next week.